What is going on, everybody? Welcome. We made it to the top 10 of TFG's top 100 players for 2019. A couple things before we get into it here. First, please do hit the like button here on YouTube. Second, this entire series, 1 to 100, will be uploaded tomorrow on the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. So if you missed any of these videos, you want to get them all in one, you can get it right there. We've kind of relaunched this podcast. We had our deep dive series over the summer, so we took a bit of a break from the podcast, but we are back. You can find it on pretty much any platform out there, and please leave a review. It really helps me out. So that's all I had to plug. Let's get into the top 10 here. We have a surprise here at number 10, Myles Garrett. Now, he had a great season last year. He made 49th on the players list. Well, Cleveland has crazy expectations this season. I would argue they're too high. Let's just see this team get in the playoffs. That would be a successful year for Baker in his second season and the first year with Freddie Kitchens. Now, maybe they have the ability to put it all together and win a Super Bowl, but at like 14-1, I'm not necessarily buying that. But a reason that you might say that they have that type of upside is they have a guy in Myles Garrett that can be a top 10 player in the NFL. You want to talk about an elite edge rusher. You need to really have freak athleticism. There's really good pass rushers that don't necessarily have that freak status that are just capped a little bit. Myles Garrett has no cap. There's no reason he couldn't at some point be the best player in the NFL because of his athleticism. But obviously that's not the only thing he has. He has great power as a rusher. His technique is fantastic. He's got the work ethic. He is really flawless off the field. And he's got help around him now, and he also has some bend to him. So really, I'm looking at Myles Garrett as a guy that could have a massive season for a team garnering a lot of attention, and a guy that I think could become a top 10 elite player in this league. Number 9, Patrick Mahomes. So again, this is a independent of positional value list, and Patrick Mahomes, I have pointed out his flaws because he does have them. He is not this perfect player that many people seem to think he is this offseason. That said, I don't hate Patrick Mahomes. I think he has, the highest upside that we've seen out there. He's basically if Aaron Rodgers started when he was 23, But he does have flaws. He does make some throws that are questionable. He does have gunslinger tendencies. He does spray some throws. He's not perfect, but he's young and he's in his second year as a starter, so he's only going to get better. I think his tape is actually going to be better this season, but I do think that we have a little regression to the mean in terms of his statistics, and people are going to cool off on him, and that's kind of the way that football fans work. So maybe after this season, I'll be allowed to be high on Patrick Mahomes. Right now, based on the way people are talking about him, I'm technically low on him, but I still think he's a top 10 player in the NFL next year. He really should be the favorite for MVP again with all of the weapons he has there. That's another criticism of him, is that there really isn't a better situation for a quarterback in the NFL. And you can't really sit there and say if Aaron Rodgers was there, or Carson Wentz, or Andrew Luck, or Baker Mayfield even, it's hard to say they wouldn't be the NFL MVP in that Kansas City offense last year that stayed healthy and had the best play calling in the NFL and two of the best mismatch problems in the NFL. So regardless of all that, Patrick Mahomes is a special player, has really everything you look for in a quarterback, and he's only going to continue to get smarter and better. Number 8 is Aaron Rodgers, who we just talked about. Now, he made number 8 on the players list. Frankly, if it's a list from last season, Aaron Rodgers was not a top 10 player in the NFL. But you really can't ignore, number 1, just his track record as a guy that has had many seasons as the best player in the NFL, regardless of position. Last season he played on a torn MCL and a broken leg. He had basically all rookie wide receivers outside of Devontae Adams. He had a coach that got fired. This is going to be a prove-it season in a way for Aaron Rodgers to prove that, he is coachable, that Mike McCarthy was the problem. I do take that stance. If Mike McCarthy was such a great coach, he would have been hired instead of a guy like Zach Taylor out there on the market. So we'll see. I do expect a big bounce-back season for Aaron Rodgers. We get to see him in the NFL opener, which is like 4 freaking weeks away. We are so close. So number 7, we got another Wisconsin boy, J.J. Watt. he kind of quietly was an elite player last season. He actually led all edge players in pressures. Now, he will kick inside. He plays about 30 to 40% of his snaps as that 3-tech interior defensive end in the Texans scheme, but he will also play a ton on the edge. He has raw explosiveness at his size. His length is pretty much unparalleled in the NFL. He actually didn't get as many batted balls, which had led to a lot of interceptions earlier in his career, but he is still an elite pass rusher. And I think with the emergence of guys like Khalil Mack and Aaron Donald, we've kind of forgotten how good J.J. Watt is after a couple seasons of injury. I think a lot of people just assumed that he is not same old J.J. Watt. Maybe he isn't that number one player in the NFL, but he is still a top 10 elite player. And then number 6, Fletcher Cox. This was probably the most disrespected player on the NFL Network list. Fletcher Cox, to me, is closer to Aaron Donald than the next interior defensive lineman is to Fletcher Cox, if that makes sense. These guys are both in their own tier, even if Aaron Donald is even a tier above Fletcher Cox. He is a top 5 defensive player in the NFL. He had over 100 pressures in the NFL. That was second among any players in the NFL. The only other player not named Aaron Donald to have over 100 pressures. He opens up everything for that defense. You have to double this man or he will sack the quarterback because of his raw explosiveness. He has basically the perfect build at like 6'3", 300 pounds. He'll get under your pad level, but he's big enough to have the power, and he's just so athletic to have the get off. Like, he is just a monster. And he's a big reason I think the Eagles, came in number 1 in my power rankings, paired with getting Carson Wentz back healthy, because you have a player like Fletcher Cox that is that elite nightmare up front. And then speaking of nightmares, Von Miller, he has been overshadowed kind of in the same way J.J. Watt has. Both these guys are getting a little older. Guys like Khalil Mack, Aaron Donald are really captivating right now. But Von Miller, still a top 3 edge rusher in the NFL, the best bend in the NFL. He has some added versatility in terms of his athleticism in coverage. He has also really improved his game as a run defender. He is, by edge rush standards, a more slender, smaller guy. So earlier in his career, he may have not necessarily gotten bullied around, but it wasn't necessarily a strength. Well, he has really helped solidify the edge and set the edge in the run game as well. So Von Miller, still a top 5 player in this league for me. And we'll see what he can do for a Broncos defense with Vic Fangio trying to kind of be a defensive-oriented playoff kind of team. We'll see how that all plays out. I think Denver is an interesting team to watch this season. Number 4, DeAndre Hopkins. So the Texans, they have a lot of depth issues, and they don't really have an offensive line, but they do have 2 players inside the top 7, and their quarterback also made my list of top 100 players. So, in terms of top-end talent, I don't know if anyone has what the Texans have. DeAndre Hopkins really took the crown last year as the number 1 wide receiver in the NFL, did not have a drop. He is just an outstanding route runner. He's got the length and quickness to release. He's got the speed to go deep. What really impresses me the most in terms of his route running is he is stellar at finding the open hole in zones, which is one thing if you're playing for a pocket passing quarterback. It's nice to have that chemistry, but it's a whole nother level when you have a quarterback that extends plays like Deshaun Watson has. One of the biggest things when a player breaks the pocket like that is to have a quarterback that is, to have a receiver that sees the field the way the quarterback does. We talked about Aaron Rodgers having rookie wide receivers last year, and that's obviously something he does a lot, is break the pocket. But when you have receivers that don't know what they're doing once the quarterback tries to extend the play, then what good is it to have a quarterback that can get outside the pocket and extend plays? Well, DeAndre Hopkins can see the entire field just as well as the quarterback does, and he almost always finds the open part of the field, and that is why him and Deshaun Watson are able to create so much magic, and why he does come in as the best wide receiver in the NFL, because he's got all the physical tools, but he might be the smartest receiver in the NFL right now too. Number 3, Bobby Wagner. He actually came in 15th on the NFL list. This surprised me. That might be a reflection of the NFL still kind of undervaluing the linebacker position. I think that's a trend we're going to continue to see getting developed over the next few years, is that the middle linebacker position, to have a true 3-down linebacker who can not just play the run, which was so important about 15 years ago, but now as the league has transitioned to quick hitting passes, screens, RPOs, to have a heady, athletic, sideline to sideline linebacker, to me, is right there now with edge rusher, an elite interior rusher, and cornerback, as things you need to play elite defense in 2019. And Bobby Wagner is the best at that. He does not miss a tackle, like we said. The guy's like a 4.4 40 type of athlete. He can thump. He's 240 pounds. Like, he is the perfect linebacker, and certainly worthy of a top 5 ranking for me. Number 2, Khalil Mack. If he didn't miss a couple of games last year, he would have led all edge defenders in pressures last season. Now coming in with a full season to kind of prepare with this Bears team in the offseason, he really was a spark plug there, and he still comes in as number 2. Number 2 on my list for next year. He made number 3 on NFL Network's list. He is the best edge rusher in the NFL right now. His long arm technique is really unique. His ability to set that up, because you do have to be afraid of the speed, so you have to drop back a little bit, get back on your heels, and then he'll plant that basically his wrist inside your shoulder pads, because he has the length to get inside there, and then the power to just drive you back. That is, to be an elite pass rusher, you have to have that go-to move. That, to me, is what Khalil Mack has, but then he'll beat you in every other which way. So he truly is the best edge rusher in the NFL. And then Aaron Donald, no argument here. He's just in a tier of his own. There's no player, the gap between number 2 and number 1 is bigger than any other gap on this list. He has really set the prototype for the undersized interior defensive lineman, something that I've been saying since I started this channel, that this is one of the biggest holes in the market in terms of old school NFL scouting and thinking, is that you need a big-bodied interior defensive lineman. If you have a guy that is as athletic as Aaron Donald, and is technically sound and as strong just in his core strength as Aaron Donald, it is actually an advantage to be 6'1" and to be a little quicker, because you have that leverage. Football is all about low man wins. So, we've gone years and years and years of seeing these 6'4", 330-pound defensive tackles. Those guys are a lot easier to block than Aaron Donald, because Aaron Donald is just screaming in at your knees. So the best player in the NFL is Aaron Donald. I don't think we're going to get any argument there. So that's the list. Again, guys, go check out the podcast wherever you get your podcast. That's the Fully Inflated Football Podcast with That Franchise Guy. Hit the like button here on YouTube. Hope you enjoyed the series. Cheers as always, and we'll see you for the next one. Peace.